Level 1, the private. You are 17. The gymnasium smell is still in your memory 2 years later. Chalk dust, cold linoleum, a doctor's hands checking your teeth like you were livestock at a market, counting your teeth the way a man counts coins he already owns. That was the exam. Now you stand in a line of boys who are also 17, also silent, holding papers that were never really a choice, because Article 86 of the Constitution declared the defense of the fatherland the supreme duty and honor of every citizen long before you were old enough to read it for yourself. Nobody hands you the article. They hand you the uniform instead, folded stiff, smelling of a warehouse, and they wait for you to put it on the way they've watched 10,000 boys put it on before you. The wool is rougher than you expected. The boots don't fit, and no one apologizes for it. You'll grow into them, or you'll bleed into them, and either way you'll march. Somewhere ahead of you, though you don't know its shape yet, are 10 levels between this morning and Marshall, a distance so vast it doesn't feel real, the way a mountain doesn't feel real from the base of it. You are not a soldier yet. You are only a start, a name checked off a list, a body assigned a bunk. The ration arrives in a dented metal bowl, and you learn to measure your life in grams before you ever learn to measure it in years. 650 to 750 grams a day, mostly corn, sometimes rice when the season has been kind to the harvest, occasionally a thin broth with something green floating in it that nobody names. You eat standing, because sitting wastes the light, because the sergeant with the clipboard doesn't believe in wasted light. The day begins at 5, when the barracks are still black and cold, and it does not end until 10. And in between there is drilling until your arms forget what stillness feels like, and marching until the ground itself seems to tilt beneath your boots, and the particular silence of men too exhausted to complain, because complaining costs energy nobody can spare. A service record compiled by outside researchers tracking North Korean military conditions confirms what your body has already told you without needing confirmation. The KPA's daily schedule leaves almost no unstructured hour, and leave, when it is granted at all, is counted in single days scattered across a year, not weeks, not seasons. You start to understand, somewhere in the second month, that hunger is not a flaw in the system, an oversight some quartermaster forgot to fix. It is the system's oldest and most reliable tool, because a body that is tired and a stomach that is empty do not ask why orders exist. They only ask what comes next, and then they do it, because doing it is easier than the alternative. They do not starve you into weakness. They starve you into obedience, 1 gram at a time. Okanam sleeps 2 racks down the row from you, and for 3 months you've shared a canteen cup, a running joke about the mess sergeant's mustache, a particular way of lacing boots that saves 4 seconds standing information, small currency, but currency all the same, the kind that makes a barracks bearable. Then one gray morning his name appears on a different list, posted on a board nobody reads twice, and by that same afternoon he is gone. Not discharged, not punished for anything anyone can name, just quietly reassigned to a construction battalion, a soldier who will spend the rest of his service pouring concrete for roads and bunkers, and will never once fire the rifle they issued him on his first day. You ask why? The way you'd ask about weather, expecting no real answer and getting none. But you already understand, because you've watched enough of these mornings now to recognize the shape of them. His songbun, the inherited loyalty classification stamped onto every North Korean family for generations back, a grading system decided long before he was born, marked him early, and that mark decided his unit before either of you ever stood in this line together. You watch him carry his duffel toward the waiting trucks, shoulders square out of habit rather than pride, and you realize, with a coldness that settles somewhere under your ribs, that the war had already assigned him a rank before his mother went into labor with him. You thought the climb started at the gate. It started before you were born, in a file somewhere you will never be allowed to read. Your unit is given a field on the edge of the base, not because anyone particularly wants to farm it, but because no one above you is coming to feed you, and everyone below you already knows it. The wheat sheaf stitched onto the officer's shoulder boards isn't decoration, however much it might look like one from a distance. It's a promise the state makes to itself, and then quietly hands down the chain until it lands, heavy and literal, in your hands, turning soil with a shovel that was meant, on paper, for a trench. Units grow their own vegetables in whatever soil they're issued, raise pigs when pigs can be found, fish the rivers running near their posts when the season allows it, because the supply line running above you is thinner, far thinner, than the one you are expected to hold for the men below you. You kneel in a row of new green shoots on a cold morning, hands in the dirt, breath fogging in front of your face, and you understand, in your hands before it ever reaches your mind, the entire shape of the hierarchy you've joined. The army feeds the army, no one above feeds down. Level 5. Sangsa. Your collar changes. The fabric replaced with a stripe that means something different now, and so does the weight sitting on your shoulders when you walk into the barracks each morning. You are senior sergeant now, and for the first time in your life there are men, younger, newer, greener than you ever were, who wait for your order before they let themselves move. There's a strange grammar built into what you've become, one you didn't notice until someone pointed it out over a cigarette one evening. In most armies the word officer belongs only to the men above the enlisted ranks, a title earned through commission, but in the KPA, the non-commissioned ranks you now hold carry the title as well. A naming choice that quietly tells you something no training manual ever spelled out directly. Authority here was never assumed by rank alone, never simply granted and forgotten. It is watched continuously, and it can be taken back as easily and as quietly as it was given. You give your first real order on a cold parade ground, and your voice comes out steadier than you actually feel inside. The men obey anyway, immediately, without the half-second hesitation you were braced for. That's the part that unsettles you afterward, lying awake. Not that they might have hesitated, but that they didn't. That they moved before your voice had even finished earning the right to be obeyed. Command, you learn in that unsettled quiet, is a thing worn. It was never a thing owned. The academy gives you your bars in a ceremony that feels both enormous and strangely small, and Soi is stitched onto your uniform before your hands have ever really held a wounded man, before you've ever missed a shot that actually mattered to someone's survival. Elsewhere in the world, an officer's commission tends to follow years spent earning it in the field, blood and mud before brass. Here it can arrive first, the commission handed to you almost like a question, and the field experience comes after, slowly. New junior officers typically spend 5 to 7 years still finding their footing in real command before the rank stitched onto their collar actually matches the judgment sitting behind their eyes. You stand in front of soldiers considerably older than you, men who have already buried friends you've never met, and you give orders you are still quietly learning the true weight of. One of them, a corporal easily twice your age, corrects your formation without saying a single word, just a small, deliberate shift of his shoulders that you're meant to notice and silently follow, a correction disguised as nothing at all. You notice, you follow it exactly. It's the first time you understand, all the way down, that a commission is a door swinging open, not a floor solid beneath your feet. They gave you the rank before they gave you the reason for it. Your company grows under your command, and with it grows your sense of exactly how far the uniform actually reaches into ordinary life. You inspect a railway checkpoint near your post one grey afternoon, and find the station master addressed by his own soldiers as though he outranks them, and, as it turns out, he does. The KPA has long folded its railway administration directly into military rank itself, station managers holding captain's rank, engineers and conductors carrying sergeant's stripes on sleeves that have never once marched a formal drill in their lives. The coal train running its slow route down the line answers, in the end, to the very same chain of command that governs your rifle company 2 provinces away. You stand on the cracked platform, watching the train pull out under a sky the color of wet ash, and you realize the country's entire rail schedule and your unit's supply schedule are, when you trace them back far enough, the same document, filed by the same distant hand. There is no door out of this, only further in. Battalion command arrives with an office that smells faintly of old paper, a map table scarred with decades of use, and a second chair positioned across from your desk that you did not request and cannot remove. The man who eventually sits in it is a political officer, and from that point forward he is present for nearly every decision you make, not to assist you in making it, never that, but to record precisely how you made it, for a file you will never be shown. Between 1991 and 1995, in the fragile years following Kim Il-sung's death, close to 800 of roughly 1,200 senior officers across the KPA were reassigned or promoted, chosen not chiefly for skill demonstrated in the field, but for loyalty demonstrated during a transition nobody was certain would hold. You absorb the lesson those numbers taught an entire generation of officers before you. Competence keeps you useful to the machine, but loyalty is the only thing that keeps you breathing inside it. You start rehearsing your own certainty before meetings now, quietly in the mirror some mornings, the way another man might rehearse a lie he's grown tired of telling. Loyalty here is not a virtue anyone praises you for. It is simply the only currency that clears. Regiment command comes next, and with it arrives a strange, disorienting kind of blindness. You now command units you will never personally lay eyes on. Men whose entire existence to you is a name on a roster. Decisions carried out by officers 3 ranks beneath you, who report upward only the version of events that keeps their own careers and their own necks safe. In 2012, the Army's Chief of Staff, Ri Yong-ho, one of the most senior soldiers in the entire country, was abruptly dismissed without any public explanation offered, just days after Kim Jong-un's rise to power. A man standing at what should have been the summit of the very structure you are still climbing, removed as easily and as quietly as a private reassigned over a bad file 2 decades earlier. You start double-checking your own reports twice before sending them upward now. Not because you believe you've done anything wrong, but because rightness, you've come to understand, stopped being the thing that protects a man at your level long ago. You do not become paranoid at this rank. You simply arrive and find that paranoia is already sitting in the room, furniture that was there before you moved in. You reach Daejeong, General, and for one long, quiet evening you let yourself believe the climb is nearly finished, that the mountain has finally leveled out beneath you. Then you learn, the way such things are always learned, quietly and second-hand, what happened to the man who once stood exactly where you now stand, 1 grade above you at Vice Marshal, Hyun Young-chol, promoted to that rank in 2012, reportedly executed only 3 years later. The details never fully confirmed, never fully denied. You understand, finally, standing in a uniform heavier with stars than you ever once imagined wearing as a boy in that cold gymnasium, that the room above you was never a floor a man could simply walk onto through merit and patience. In more than 70 years of this army's entire history, only 3 men have ever crossed into marshal rank by blood alone: Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un, and exactly 1 man outside that bloodline, Oh Jin-woo, a lifelong loyalist to the first Kim, was ever permitted to join them at that height. The summit, you realize standing very still in your office, was never a rank at all. It was a bloodline, and you were never, not for 1 single day of this long climb, going to be born into it. The bottom and the top are the same room. Neither one was ever yours to own. You walk a dirt road outside a town whose name meant absolutely nothing to you the first time you put on the uniform, all those decades ago, and means even less now that you've finally taken it off for the last time. The clothes are civilian and they feel borrowed even though they are, technically, entirely your own. The collar sits loose and strange where the stars used to press against your skin. Somewhere behind you now are decades measured in grams of corn and names quietly appearing on lists, and men who saluted you before they had any real reason to. Ahead of you, in the fading light, is a farmhouse, a field going gold at the edges, an ordinary evening settling in the way ordinary evenings do. You walk it slowly, the way a man walks when he has finally, after everything, been allowed to stop climbing. That's the climb. Whether you're 17 or 70, some ladders were never yours to keep. You were only ever allowed to hold them for a while and then hand them back.